everyone, and welcome to Table Talk. We're so excited that you're able to join us as we talk all things food waste, insecurity, and food rescue. I'm your host, Stephanie, the volunteer manager for Table to Table. And for all who are new, allow me to introduce you to our organization. Table to Table is a community-based food rescue program that collects perishable food that would have otherwise been wasted and delivers it to organizations that serve the hungry in Bergen, Essex, Hudson, and Passaic counties. We rescue food from over 200 donors, including supermarkets, food distributors, restaurants, and commercial kitchens. And we deliver it same day free of charge to over 250 community partners, including food pantries, shelters, and programs serving those in need. We have a very special treat for you all today as we're traveling to Drew University to speak with Dr. Laurel Kearns about the impact of food waste on the environment and everything that the school is doing to raise awareness about this very important issue. So we have arrived here at Drew University in Madison, New Jersey, and we have the opportunity to speak with Dr. Laurel Kearns about all of the innovative work that she is doing here at Drew with sustainability and economic impact. So let's go in and see what it's all about. Thank you so much to Dr. Kearns for having us here today. We are so interested to get to know all about everything that you do here at Drew and how that has a direct impact on environmental awareness as well as food waste. And so Dr. Kearns, thank you so much. Our first question is, we'll dive right in. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what you do here at Drew?
So I'm Laurel Kearns, and I'm a professor of ecology, society, and religion. And I like to joke, those are sort of three ways we talk about the world and how it's important. And I've been here for 30 years. And the wonderful thing about Drew is that I was hired in part because I worked on religious care for creation. And I've always been interested in what motivates religious people to care about what happens to nature and to think about environmental issues. And so that's been my lifelong work here, and I've taught a lot of classes on it. I'm just finishing Christianity ecology, but my perhaps proudest moment is that we now have a required course called Global Face in the Earth. And the idea behind it is that we only have one Earth, and if we don't work together to preserve it, then we're all going to suffer from it. So it's about interfaith cooperation, but it's particularly to help students understand different environmental issues, but also the place of different imagery in their traditions. Like we were just talking about trees and how you find trees in Genesis and you find trees in Revelation. Or we talk about the importance of water and what does it mean to be baptized in polluted water. So those ways of saying there are, every religious tradition has deep roots for caring for those around us, for the air, the water, the land that we depend on, for the other creatures. None of us can survive without clean air and clean water and land that'll produce food. So what I hope is it also produces a sense of gratitude, incredible gratitude for the very stuff of life, and an awareness that we don't mourn what we don't care about. And if we're not grateful, if we're not struck with the beauty, with the awesomeness of the natural world, then we don't care that much when it gets destroyed. But in the end, it always has a negative effect on us.
So I wanted to dive in a little bit more about one of the courses in particular that I took was the Global Face in the Earth. And there was a portion of the course where we focused specifically on food waste and the environmental impact. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you convey to the students the importance of reducing food waste and specifically the impact that it has on the environment?
Right, and I'm so glad you picked up on that segment, because I teach a whole course on religions and food, in part because that's so important. And if you think about it, in our religious traditions, eating together, food is often a central ritual. And feeding others is important. And the notion of a communal table, or of coming to communion. But what we don't think about is what happens to what doesn't get eaten. Or what happens before it ever gets to our table. In other words, a tremendous amount of food waste is because we only want to buy perfect things. And so things that aren't perfect, that in just a generation or two ago would have been gladly eaten, they don't even make it to our stores. So part of what I try and introduce students to is the amount of waste that happens in the fields. You know, the amount of food that's left there, the amount of food that's sorted out. And so that always has quite an impact on them. But what I realize is most of us don't think, when we throw something away, we don't think what away is. And so we don't think about the impact of all of that rotting food.
Yes.
And the impact of that is greenhouse gas emissions. And so part of what I want students to connect is how these smaller issues connect to climate change, connect to global warming. And this area of New Jersey is going to be quite impacted, especially by rising water. And we're already seeing it. We're seeing these incredible rain events. But also it's just such a waste of all of the work that goes into producing the food. And as you all know, it's a waste of the food that could go to feed people.
Yes.
So it's ridiculous that people starve when we throw away so much food.
Exactly.
And so I try, and through different videos often, give them a sense of how much food they waste. They have a personal change assignment, and some of them choose to pay attention to how much they're throwing out, or they pay attention to what's on their plate, because that's another part of it. There are some foods, we might say, that are produced more efficiently. There's not as much waste or not as much water used in them, and there's others that are incredibly detrimental. And so we talk a lot about that, like what food do you eat, and what is its impact, and how does it affect workers? But many churches, and not all my students are in churches, many of them work with nonprofits, are concerned about feeding others, that no one should go hungry, that no one should be wondering where their next meal comes from. And so that unit really resonates with students. So it gets us thinking about our contributions to climate change in ways we might not. It gets us thinking about the impact of what we consume, what we choose to purchase, how we throw things out. And it gets them thinking about what is our connection, who is our neighbor, so to speak.
So for us at Table to Table, a big part of our mission is rescuing food, reducing waste, and relieving hunger. Mostly we have focused on the relieving hunger portion of it, but there is a very big impact that we are making in reducing environmental waste and what that means. And so when you were talking about the videos that you use in your class, one of the things that I can recall is the farm and how those fruits and vegetables are harvested, and the pesticides that are used in the worker while the workers are working in the field, and what kind of health implications that can yield. And I think one of the most impactful things was that it was seeing the human side. What does it take to get us this food? And now what are you then saying that you are okay with wasting or not eating? And another thing that you mentioned is, the pretty fruit. We think about like the bruised apple or the, dented orange that is still very much usable. And there are people that would love to have that, and we just, bypass it because it doesn't look like perfection. And I think so starting to change the way that we view food and what is good, what is deemed usable, can help to make a very big impact. You mentioned also a lot about the Change Project that you used, and I wanted to talk a little bit about what you are doing and what Drew is doing to kind of enforce the idea of sustainability as the students go on from here.
Well, thank you. And I want to thank you also for reminding us that what gets thrown out ends up in landfills that people have to live near. And what's even more striking in this area is most of our waste is trucked to places in New York, to Pennsylvania. And so think of those smaller communities that have all of those garbage trucks coming in all day long. I had a student from upstate New York that did her whole project. I'm just saying, this is the impact of my community.
Wow.
This is you all's garbage, and we pay the price for all the fumes from the trucks. So here in this New York metro area, the amount of waste that we produce is quite stunning. And this year, I've had Korean students who have taught others about how South Korea deals with food waste because they don't have any place to truck it to. They're basically an island because of North Korea. And so they have these machines that they're sort of everywhere near you live where you put your food waste in and it gets composted. Then that compost is used to grow things. So that's the other connection that we like to make. We have a community garden here. And, if folks are involved in growing food, you learn that it doesn't always look pretty, but it's fine because you grew it. And it tastes really good. So I think that really helps folks to think about what goes into growing food. And I have that particular passion for workers being sprayed because I grew up in South Florida where tomatoes are grown. And in some of those fields, the working conditions have been near slavery. I mean, there have been workers locked up at night.
Oh my goodness.
And so I grew up aware of that. And the Coalition of Immokalee Farm Workers has really led the way in reforming those practices, but they just wanted 1 penny a pound more for tomatoes, which adds up. And these workers pick so much. And one of the ways they did it was to target fast food restaurants. And they got churches, they got denominations involved. So I'm always proud that the United Methodists, which Drew is affiliated with, they were part of supporting that we won't eat from these places until they agree to it. And almost a lot of the major fast food and grocery stores have agreed to it. There's one that's never agreed to it. They decided they would get their tomatoes from out of the country where the regulations, the protections aren't as great. So that's one of the things that you can see how that's really tying in the justice aspects. And it's showing what can religious people do, what can churches do. The other thing we do is, you got to practice what you preach. If you're not walking your talk, then everyone's just saying, oh, that's fine, that's fine. So one of the things I ask the students right off the bat is, please don't bring in disposable drinks. Get a water bottle, whatever. Because if you say you drink 3 bottles of water a day, well, that's 21 bottles in a week. That's 84 bottles in a month. And I just asked them to envision them starting to stack up in their corner. And we were figuring out in class the other day, that's pretty much 1,000 a year.
Dr. Kearns, I'm guilty of that because that was my project, is monitoring the amount of water bottles that we use in my house because we only drink water mainly in my home. And so that was something that was very impactful. But I think you mentioned, you hit the nail on the head there. It's awareness. It's awareness. You can only change something, you can only care about something, you can only be invested in something that you are aware of. And I think that your course and Drew as a whole do a very good job of raising awareness to very important, impactful issues. And so my last question for you is, if you could, and it'll be a mandatory thing for all the students, if you could make one change in your students' lives that they would have to do that would significantly impact the reduction of environmental waste as it pertains to food, what do you think it would be?
I'm going to say something controversial.
Oh, man.
But it's part of, you asked, what do we do? How do we practice what we preach here?
Yes.
And the analysis shows us that the way meat is produced, particularly four-legged meat, let's say, has a really outsized impact on climate emissions and on water usage and on deforestation. So I just this week showed my students pictures of rainforests cleared in Brazil to grow soy that will grow to feed cows. And that rainforest can't be brought back. So here at Drew, we've asked the students to not order, we call it mammal meat. So it's fine on chicken and turkey. We're not, asking everyone to go vegetarian. We do ask that there always be a vegetarian option. So that's what I would probably ask my students is, my students tell me they eat meat 3 times a day. And the amount of meat that they eat is always very striking. And so one of the things is we go through, you don't need that much meat. It's not good on your body. But the other thing is to ask them to particularly think about the climate impact of the food they eat.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that meat is the only thing. Dairy is, those same four-legged cows are producing that dairy and that cheese that I love. So I think that would be one thing, because you hit the nail already. It's the learning to be aware, to be mindful, to ask those questions about, I call it the ethical reach of a product. What is the connection between what I'm consuming in whatever way and who produced it? What kind of land was cleared, maybe? Who's not getting water? I mean, out west, they grow alfalfa that is bought by Middle Eastern countries. It's not consumed here. And the water goes to those fields before it goes to people. And so when you start thinking about that, it drives me crazy that out west is under severe drought and the water is basically being bought by countries who don't have water. So they're buying our water and what we grow, and it's not really being used here. And people are suffering because of it.
I think number one, thank you so much for just sitting with me today. A big goal for Table to Table in our Table Talk episodes is not to just have conversations about things in our field, but also what is it connected to, and just to bring some education to our viewers on different topics in the food waste, in food insecurity, and in environmental impact. So thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm so happy. As you know, you were one of my favorite professors here at Drew. So just you being able to sit with me, I am truly grateful.
Well, I am very grateful to be a part of this, and it made me think of one of the other reasons I long ago was inspired to think about food. And I'm going to be theological here for a moment. If you think about it, breathing and eating are our most intimate connections with creation. And from a biblical basis, we know that God cares about all of creation. And we know we can't survive with all the rest of creation. So I teach a book called Food and Faith. And it draws on long traditions of eating being, in some ways, a prayerful practice. The sense of gratitude, the sense of realizing my life depends on this. So theologically, I think that's the other thing I hope my students come away with, is that sense of deep gratitude. Because we don't mourn what we don't love. and we don't miss something we aren't grateful for.
Wow.
So that's my parting. Sort of make every day be a day of Thanksgiving when we think about what an incredible gift from creation is our food.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Kearns.
I want to give a big thank you to Dr. Kearns and Drew University for having us today. We certainly learned a lot, and I hope that something in this video has impacted the way that you view food waste. But before we go, let's check out our food waste fact of the day. Did you know that large quantities of food are wasted daily because of an emphasis on appearance? Almost half of all produce in the U.S. is thrown away because it's deemed too ugly to eat. This amounts to 60 million tons of fruits and vegetables wasted annually.
Wow, that certainly changes the way that I view food waste. How do you guys feel about it? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to like and share this video, and if you want to get involved with Table to Table, visit us on our website at tabletotable.org, and be sure to download our Table to Table iRescue app. This will allow you to find rescues that are right in your area. Well, that's all the time that we have. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to keep a lookout for our next episode of Table Talk.